All right, let's create a Google Apps script that will listen to our email and look for resumes when we send them. So we'll need some sort of way to identify, what types of emails to monitor and what to extract, etc. But then we want this process to extract the resume contents, figure out what kind of format it's in, and then create a single format document, assign it to a folder, and then pull some of the data here into a spreadsheet so that we can easily access and view where we're getting resumes, etc., etc. This is a rebuild of something I created last month. But it's going to be a much, much smaller version and simpler version of it, and just kind of generic in nature. But let's get started. So first thing we want to do is define our table. So think about what we want to see. So I want to know who sent it. So sender. I want to have maybe the email identifier. So the email identifier will literally be the email ID associated with where we drew the content from. Probably not necessary for most people in most cases, but I like to put this stuff into my table so that I can cross-reference. So for example, if I wanted to know where did this resume come from, I can go in here and then see, oh, well, this is the email, and so I can pull up in the email via the email ID and see, okay, this is where this, not only, who was the sender, but where did it come about from, all that extra information that I may not want to parse into this sheet at the moment, but that I can access at a later date and then completely rebuild my table if I wanted to programmatically. So I always just dump in these IDs just because they're nice to have for the future in case you need to make any changes, but that's just my personal preference. We might move these columns around, but let's keep going. So email identifier, and actually I'm just going to put that over here. Whoa. So who sent it? The resume ID, so and actually I say link is the link and ID will be the same. Well, the ID will be associated with the link path, and so we'll just go ahead and create a link that we can click on, and then resume candidate name, candidate email, candidate phone, candidate LinkedIn, and timestamp. That should be good for now. We might switch things up. Now we need to go into our script editor. So let's get rid of that. Let's name this resume reader parser. Doesn't really matter. And let's assign the spreadsheet that we're working in sheet ID So that's our sheet that we're working in. Spreadsheet app get or open by ID, I believe, is what we are calling here. And just, you know, for let's go look it up in Google Sheets. So we'll say spreadsheet app open by ID. Okay, and so this is the documentation for what we're working on right now. So we can see all the different functions we want or we can use, and so this is the function we're using. And I'm just going to go ahead and add that in the notes in case you all want to cross-reference this later. All right. So now, whenever we need to call this spreadsheet, which will be all the time, we can just call this variable SS. Now, within this whole spreadsheet, we want to access the sheet that we are working in, which is, hang on, let me move my camera over here. There we go. This main, this is the name of the sheet we are working in, and so we'll just call this main sheet equals SS, and then we say open by, or I think it's sheet name, or no, it's get sheet name. Get sheet by name, I think. But let's check, right? Like get sheet. Get sheet name. Nope. There we go. Get sheet by name. Cool. So we confirmed that. Let me grab the link to it. Just double check. All right, yeah, that works. And I'll dump here this into the note comment so you can look it up later. So now we've defined that whenever we need to call this sheet. We're not going to work with these yet. This is just the first thing I do when I'm setting up a new workflow within Google Sheets script or Google Apps script. But what we really need to do is write a function that will monitor our email and look for certain things. So let's write this function called, I don't know, what do I want to call this? I guess I want to write a function that's just going to look at all my emails, or like the first 100 or so emails that I have. And then from there, I would want to look at the subject. So we'll call it function get email threads by subject. And we'll pass a parameter through this as an argument, and that parameter will be what we're searching for. I'm not sure how I want to do this just yet, so I'm just throwing in something generic like parameter. But what we'll do here is we'll say var threads is equal to Gmail app get inbox threads. So this is a built-in function in Google Apps Script, not something I'm making up. And you say start with the index 0, like the current most recent message, and get 50 of them, we'll say. Actually, I'm going to say I'll do 50 for now. But you might, like, depending on how many emails you get, you might need to, and how often you run this script, you might need to say 100 or more. Because if you're anything like me, you get a ton of bullshit emails that you have to scrub through. And depending on when it runs and whenever your other scripts are running. Anyway, could be issues, but for now, we'll just say 50 as it'll do for our purposes at the moment. And then what this returns is an array of mail objects, threaded or mail threads. So if you ever use Gmail, which if you do, or if you're watching this video and have any interest, I'm assuming you use Gmail, but you probably are annoyed with the way that emails work. I know I am. It gives you like this threaded stuff, and it's honestly, I used to hate it, but now I really understand why they do it this way, and it's really handy actually when you're building scripts to handle this stuff, because when you get a message in Gmail, that message and all the replies to it are in one like entity that then you can filter through. Now, at first it's kind of annoying because you're thinking, well, that's not this email though. I sent a reply, that should be a separate email. And it is, it's a separate message. So you have to think about your emails as like these nested items. And so the initial like new email that's sent is that's like parent thread. And then all the subsequent replies are messages within that thread. So you can think of these like the initial email as the start of a new conversation. And then the emails within that are individual messages within the conversation. So we have to run through all the threads, and then we have to run through the messages within the threads. So just, it's a semantic thing that seems unintuitive, but once you really understand it, it actually becomes very powerful and useful. So I'm glad that Google does it, even though I hated them for a while for doing it. So here we're just creating a little for loop, and we'll just, if you don't understand how for loops work, definitely look them up. Like this basic for loop is one of the things you will use most often, or some variant of a for loop. In case you're one, like, so you don't need a space here. Like, I actually don't like spaces all over the place, and in JavaScript you don't have to worry about spaces too much, so I usually keep things tighter, but it's just a preference thing. So while I'm assigning a variable, I'm saying I is equal to 0, and this is just essentially an iterator. So I'm saying while I is less than the thread's length, so the length of this little array of messages, do some stuff, and then iterate through it. So I++ is the same thing as saying I equals I plus 1. So on every loop, it'll go I is 0, I is 1, I is 2, I is 3, I is 4. You see that's not matching, but it's because we start counting with 0. All right. Which gets really confusing when you're looking at sheets, because if you want to get this first row, you don't say 0, you say 1 when you're making the request. So it's something you have to keep in mind. All right. So from there, then we want to say, we need to like, we need to look at the subject, but we have to look at the subject of the message, not the thread, because the thread is just the container. So what we can do is just say our messages is equal to threads, and then we get that current item, and then we can just say get messages, and now we have an array of our messages, right? And then all I really want is the first item in that. I want the first message in it. I want to know what its subject is, because I'm listening out for, all right, whatever it is that I'm saying when I send an email with a resume, I'm going to follow a certain format so that my system knows, hey, this is something that we want to parse. And so I need to define what that subject is in some arbitrary value. So I'm just going to say subject equals the first item in, or the first message, and then get subject. Okay. I probably should be linking to some of these references. So let's just do a quick search here. There we go. Okay. So now that we have the subject, we want to validate against this parameter. And if it meets the parameter, we want to return it. Although if there's multiple ones, we'll want to return all of them. So we'll create a little container up here, and we'll just call this matches with an empty array that we'll push stuff into. So now we need to define our matches, right? So we want to say we don't want to look at messages we've already processed, so we'll just do unread messages. And we also want to check on the subject. So we have two parameters we need to check for here. So let's create an if condition, and we'll say if message, that first one is unread. I think it's and let's double check this too. And we'll link this over. So now we just have that as a reference if we need to go back to it and look at it in the future. So if message is unread and if subject matches our parameter. Oh, you know what we should do? Let's use this little generic search utility thing, parser. Should work. So I'm not going to explain how this script works, as it's not a lot of code, but it is kind of complex. It took me a really long time to write this, actually, to figure it out. Really long time. But it's pretty simple now. This used to be like 100 lines of code. It was really bad process to begin with, and it's probably still not great now, but it works pretty well. But essentially what we can do with this is we can pass through just a standard Boolean search that any normal recruiter might write, and then match it to a target of text, and then if it meets the condition, it returns true. If it doesn't, it returns false. So it's pretty handy. So we can just say Boolean search, and then we'll pass in the param, which will be our search string. And actually, let me rename that so it's less confusing. Search string. And then our target is the current subject. And so this is just going to be a true or false value. So if this is true, we're good. If it's false, nah, not doing it. Okay. So if it's true, we want to push it into the matches container that we created. And so we just use this simple JavaScript function to say, in this array, push this item, which will be message, that message. And then I guess that is it. Yeah, I was going to add a mark as red here, but if our post-processing fails, I won't want to mark it as red. And so I will mark it as red when I read it at the next level function here. So for now, and like in Google Apps Script, you can't write code as concise as you can in current ES6. So I don't know. I just like to mark what the end of a bracket does because it can get out of hand like really fast. And it's like, oh, what is this doing? Where is this stop? And so it's just if message unread and match params. And then here we will return the matches. Okay, so that's it. So this is our little function that we will use to check the messages we're looking to read and then return the ones that are a match for what we're looking to read. Now, we need to write a function to do something with those messages. So here we'll say parse resume parse candidate submissions. That works. And then we will first, let's get the resumes or the emails we're looking for. So we'll say emails equals, I'll say target emails. And now we just pass through a little search string here. So we want to say, you know what? I need another condition here because if this doesn't have an attachment, I'm not interested in it. So let's do we'll spell that correctly. What do you think? Yeah, you can do that. Okay, has attachments as a thing. Okay, so we'll say messages get attachments. And then here I'll just say, and if attachments length, I don't know what happens if there's no attachments, if it returns a null or an empty array, and that does matter because if you try to get the length of an undefined value or a null value, then it's going to run an error. Get attachments, blob of attachments for this message, but what if it doesn't? All right, I'm gonna just, this is redundant, but so like if that's true, and because these will run in a linear fashion, right? So it'll say if this is unread, okay, next step. If this is true, okay, next step. If this is true, okay, next step. So if I put all right, if this thing is true, meaning it's a defined value of some kind, even an empty array, then do one more check. Attachments length. So if attachments length is greater than 0. Shit, there's one other thing I need to account for too, because there could be BS attachments in here that I don't want. But that's okay for now. We'll address the extra stuff down below, but that's good. And let me just pull this down here, right? Because I'll need this in a second. All right, so let's define our parameter. What do we want to look for a subject on? We can say candidate submission. Or candidate sub middle, or that's fine. So this is priming me to want to change some of the way that this search works. I wanted to add an option for searching for number ranges, and I almost want to do that now because I really need it for this, for another project actually that's not related to what we're working on now, but I'm going to resist the urge to get distracted and keep working here. But man, I really want to do that now. All right. Just need another for loop here. And let me explain something here. So this is just a basic JavaScript container type thing, but the reason I can use the I variable down here, even though I'm using it up here, is because, well, one, it's contained within this for loop. But even if it wasn't, I can use the same variable names in here that I used in these because this function is a container in itself. So I don't have to worry about it. The only things I can't reuse are these things up here because I'm using them in the entire head function of the entire script. So it's less than target emails length I++. All right. So now what I wanted to know here is this attachment a PDF? Is it a doc file? Is it a docx file? How do I know these things? let me create a new variable. Just do attachment names, and then we'll say attachments map. So map is kind of like a function, but not really, or kind of like a for loop, but not really. What we can do is like we can iterate over the entire array and then say perform this action on it and return just what we've done. So it's like mapping a certain function to an array. So here we're going to say go through all of these attachments and return the name as a new array of just like instead of the attachment blob, we just want the name values as a string. So we could say so we'll pass this function through here. We'll just sign the variable L, and then we'll say return L dot, what is it, get name, it should be. I should really be testing this stuff while I'm writing it. Let's do that. Let me send an email to myself. And candidate submission. And sorry, you can't see this, but I'm sending an email to myself here, and I'm trying to find a resume that I might have that is okay to send to myself. Ideally, we'd do a PDF. All right, so I just sent myself. Okay. And then we're going to test this, so we're just going to say logger log attachment names. And we're going to see if this works. So let's save what we've done. Parse candidate submissions, hit run. We have to validate some stuff here. Review permissions. Yeah, I trust myself. It's cool. Perfectly safe. I know the dev. Whoops. Spreadsheet app is not defined. Oh, that's one of the caveats here. You do have to spell stuff correctly. Yep. Okay, so this is running. Why is it taking so long? Should not be taking this long. Oh, it's probably because I'm looking at the attachment, so it's having to do an extra level function in there. But cool, yeah, it found the resume name that I sent over. That's fine. I don't know if I like that method, but I wonder if it'll run faster if I remove this. I'm going to remove this and see how quickly it runs. It doesn't appear to be running any faster, so that's not the issue. It's just because it's having to look through 50 different threads. So it takes a minute to run. Google Apps isn't exactly fast. But we still got the same thing there, so cool. All right. So cool, we got our attachment name, so we verified. Now, the reason we want to pull this attachment name is because I'm looking for the file type this way, right? It's just an easy way for me to check against the file type without having to do this other stuff. And so we write another condition here saying if so this function, this check here is just going to validate that, hey, this is an email which contains a resume we want to process. We're still going to check it again a lower level down, but I'm checking it here just to see if any of the attachments are of the file type that we wish to check for. So I'm going to use this built-in JavaScript function called sum, which will iterate over an array and perform a function that we're going to pass through it. And if that function is true at least once, then it's true the entire time. There's also a similar function called every, which checks, all right, all these file type or all this thing function needs to run. But here we're just doing sum. And so we'll say function, and then our argument, and then return L, and then we're going to write a little regular expression here to test to see the format. So we want .pdf or .doc. Yeah, that's fine. That's doc or docx. You could write it. You could also write it this way. And I guess I will, since I went and typed that. So if that is true, then we're going to do some more stuff. So next we want to now we know it's an email we want to process. So now we can get to the good stuff. So since we know it's an email we want to process, we want to get this stuff, right? So we want to know who the sender is. So let's just go ahead and do that and say, I don't like how long this is, but whatever, this is a tutorial, so I'll try to keep stuff to where it makes sense. Sender equals get from, again, this Google Apps script function, so I mean, we'll go ahead and look it up and link to it so you can reference it later. Oops. All right, sender, and what else do we want? We want timestamp. Timestamp equals get date. And I'm pretty sure that's going to be like some kind of string that I don't like, so I'm going to parse this again saying new date, which is a JavaScript function that just gets you a standardized date format. Okay. And we want the message ID as well. get ID, and so we got the email ID, we got the timestamp, we got the sender. Okay, so this is the stuff that we get out of the email. That's done. Now we need to get the stuff that we get out of the attachments and put it in here. So the way I'm going to do this, I think, is on each attachment, I guess. So, I don't know, there could be instances where there's more than one attachment, or there are instances where you would have more than one attachment. And so I'm trying to figure out a good way to process this. Right now, my current method is not great, but I don't know. We'll figure it out as we go along. So this is kind of where the tricky stuff comes in when we're validating and converting the document. So here I want to say I want to loop through the attachments. We need another for loop, but because we're already in a for loop, we can't use that I. We need to use a different variable, so just keep that in mind. So I'm going to call it A for attachment equals 0. A is less than attachments length A plus plus. All right, and then I want to get the attachment name again. So I could say our name default name, because I'm going to change this file name too, because I want a standardized file format in my folders. Get name, and we'll say we need to get this attachment. Okay. And what else do I need? I need the current file ID, default ID. I think that's what I need to do next. Actually, I don't need that because I'm going to create a new file, and this is going to be garbage anyway. Because right now, this file doesn't actually exist in our drive. It exists as a blob within our email. So I don't actually have a real ID. I mean, not one we need to worry about. But now I need to figure out how to process, because depending on what kind of file format it is, I need to format it differently. So if the file format is a PDF, I'll do one thing. So like, let's write, trying to think of the best, easiest way to do this. Or a clean way to do this. So I think I'm going to move this if condition down to another below. Yeah. So I'm going to move this stuff up here. And then I'm going to move this loop up above the if statement. So that, yeah, this is actually not even necessary because I'm going to do individual checks down here. Comment that out for now. And this is why it's good to define the end of your loops here. Shit. All right. So now I'm just saying for attachments length, right? I'm just going to run through all the attachments. I don't need to check using the sum function because I need to check on every attachment anyway and see what kind of file type it is so I know what to do with it. So here I'll get the name, and then I'll say if this is a PDF, so this is checking for a word boundary. I don't need that. So word boundary next to PDF. Let's make this insensitive. It should always be lowercase, but so if this matches, we want to create a variable. Basically, we want to get the blob of data within the attachment. So we'll say file blob is equal to the current attachment that we're iterating through, and then we'll get it as PDF should be, actually let me just grab, actually it should just be application PDF. Application PDF, like this is actually just a JavaScript thing. But it should be documented in here as well, I would think. Yeah, here we go. And I'll just link here. You can read through it if you would like at another date, which is not right now. Cool. So if it's PDF, it's a file blob. Or I mean, it's the file blob is going to have that meme value. Okay, and then the other we want to do is MS Word, which will be like old school doc files, DOC. So let's replace this with DOC, and then this will be DOCX, DOCX. Like, if it's any other file format, I mean, let's look at them. What are all the ones we can do here? JPEG, PNG, I mean, I don't think it has all the file types here. Yeah, it doesn't. Let's see if we can find a resource on the interwebs. Surely there's like a MDN. Oh, here we go. Incomplete list. Okay. All right. MS Word is this. Cool. We needed that, so I didn't remember what it was off the top of my head anyway. So cheat codes. Let's see what else. What other file types might we have? RTF, where is that? I know some jerk is going to be on Mac with an RTF file trying to send us an RTF resume. Here we go. So let's do this one too. All right. What other meme types might we see? I guess we could get a plain text resume. It's probably not terribly common, but if we do, we want to go ahead and process it. So yeah, that should be every type of file format we would get in a resume. And so now basically what we've done here is just said, all right, you know, if it's a PDF, it's PDF, right? So we just need to know how to assign the value or how to interpret the values here. So these if conditions are just interpreters basically saying, all right, this is a PDF, so let's give it a PDF blog, et cetera, down the line. But then what we can do is say, feel like I need another condition here because if there's I mean, I guess I can just do a ternary function, right? I don't know how many of these I'll need to do, so let's just say file string is equal to the file blob exists, file blob get data as string, else just give me an empty string, I guess. And let's look this up just to make sure that I put in the correct function. Yep. Data gets data as blob string with UTF-8 encoding, UTF-8 being just, you know, the basic text format. All right. Then, so what we're going to do then is create a new document file and push it into a folder. So we need to create a folder. And then I need to be able to find that folder by its name. So let's create another function up here, and we'll call it function get folder by name and then we'll say var folders equals drive app get folders, and then we'll do a while loop here and we'll just say while folders. This is the reason I'm doing a while thing here is just because I normally don't, just because while is a dangerous thing, but like if you don't know what like is going to yeah, just look it up if you don't get it. But while folder has next and has next, actually this is probably default stuff anyway. So let's just quickly Google, or I guess it's technically Google since it's the Google devs folder iterator. Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is essentially, yeah, okay. It's a straight rip of their code. So while that has next, if let's pass a regular expression through here. So if that regular expression matches the folder oh, oops, I haven't created a folder yet, or that variable yet. So var folder get, or no, not get, it's just next. Not folders, folders. So folder get name. So if that's true, return folder get ID. Okay. And now we can just call this down here. Target folder ID. And so basically what we're doing here is just looping through the folder names that we have and then returning the matches ID so that we can then push stuff into it using the folder ID method. And I do not have a folder right now, so I'm going to create one for this, and I'm going to call it automatic, or no, let's just call it candidate resumes inbound, no, candidate submissions. Okay. Now, it's specifically called this. Like, you might have multiple folders with similar names, so you need to say, like, start. So this is the start of it. This is the end of it. So basically, it's saying this needs to be an exact match. All right. Now we can process that file. So what we want to do is create an object, and we're going to use a drive function, or the drive API actually to do this. I'm a little worried that they're about to, or that Google is going to either do away with this stuff entirely, like deprecate it, or they're actually setting things up to go enterprise. I think it's the latter, just based on some internal knowledge I have at Google. Which I'm pretty sure it's not going to be deprecated. But even if it's not, this is not stuff you can actually use at scale anymore, or like to deploy like apps within the market without some like high level approvals. But for your own usages, you can use this, so it'll be fine. And actually, let's for now just go ahead and go in here into resources, because we have to turn this API on. So here, drive API on, and now we can use it. If we don't turn this on, this next thing that we're about to do will just not work. Or not the next thing, but the next thing. Right now I need to create a variable, and I'm just going to call this fileob. Okay. And actually, let me get rid of these comments, because I know that I don't need this stuff anymore. It's cluttering up my work area. All right. All right, so I want to give it a title, and that title is going to be, so I'm going to explain what I'm doing here. So I'm creating a, essentially a temporary file. So I'm grabbing this data out of whatever kind of file this is, as the string blob, and then I am going to create a new file with it, and then insert it into my folder that I've created. And so here I'm basically saying, I'm defining the parameters of the file. So like when you inspect a file, you look at the properties of the file. So defining that right now. And here I need to define where this is like the parent of the file. Parents, because this is actually an array. And then I'm going to pass through the folder ID, which is this that we just created. And then I need to assign it a new meme type. And I want that meme type to be consistent. And in my purposes here, I just want it to be Google. For these purposes, I want it to be a Google Doc. But you might want it to be something else, but I don't. So I'm making it a Google Doc. So let's do meme type, and that meme type should be application. It's going to be this, and then it'll be, should just be Google Apps document. Let's double check. That's right. And I'm just going to go ahead and dump this in here for future reference. All right, that's good. Now we'll create the new file, right? We've just defined the parameters. So say new file equals drive files insert and file ob and then file blob. And so what this is doing, if you've ever, saved a PDF or a doc file to Google Drive, you can open it with Google Docs, and that's like honestly the easiest way to convert this stuff. Really, the PDF conversion is not great a lot of the time, but that's usually just because PDFs are oftentimes formatted improperly. But essentially what this is doing is automating that task of going, open up and create a Google document for me. This is doing that programmatically. Cool. So now we want the ID of this new document that we've created. So we'll just call this new doc ID, and we'll say new file get ID, and now we want to what am I doing with this? Is this something I even need? I don't think I need this, because this is the string of the encoded document that we looked at, and I can't process that, right? So if it's PDF, it's going to have all kinds of garbage in there, and we don't need to do that. That's the whole reason why we're converting it to a Google Doc, so that it'll be a consistent file format. So I'm pretty sure I don't need this, but so I'm just going to comment it out for now, because what I want to do next is say I'm going to open it. I'm going to open this new doc that I created, and then I'm going to go grab the text out of there, because that's the text I want. So new doc file text is equal to document app open by ID new doc ID, and then get body, and then get, oh wait a minute, get get body, get text, but sometimes people have some data in the header. And so I'm going to get the header as well. And then I'm just going to rename this body text. And let's new doc file just so we're not calling that function twice, because that'll make it slower. We can call it once, assign it to this ID, and then, or assign it to this variable, and then just call that variable, because it's going to be the same thing. Cool. Now, from there, I want to extract some information out of this resume. And I want to get the link. I want to get these items, right? So this is the issue I was running or thinking about earlier. If I've sent multiple files with multiple resume or multiple files like document and PDF files, I'm not necessarily going to know which one's a resume and which is not a resume. So up here, I'm going to create some container, like some array containers to toss this stuff into as I'm iterating through. So like the possible email address matches, the possible phone number matches, the possible LinkedIn profile link matches, and the possible name matches. And then I'll figure out what to do with them. And then, emails, phones, okay. And then I can check. So I want to know, damn. If there's not a header, that might fail. We should probably run a test. Yeah, let's run a test. Logger log. Header. Now this is going to create a file, but we'll just delete it when we're done. And we have to give it permissions again because now it's looking to create files within our drive. So we just have to say, yeah, it's cool. I trust the dev because I'm the dev. Should see it show up here in just a moment if nothing fails. Ooh, it's taking a minute. Has next of undefined. Oh, oops. My bad. Let's try this again. Typos. That's why it's good to run these tests like as you're building it. Is you end up with like a dozen errors and you're going line by line, mapping out all your errors. And within Google Apps Script, it's really easy to identify your errors because, you know, they've got a great platform. I mean, it's kind of slow and clunky, but in terms of like error tracing and figuring out what's going on and just their version of JavaScript. It's all very intuitive for new programmers. Maybe not necessarily intuitive, but easier to figure out than other platforms, in my opinion. Ah, yeah, another typo. Test, not text. And this is going to take another minute to run. So while that's doing, let's look at JavaScript Regex. The different types. Test basically just returns a true or false value. Whoa, there's Firefox with a cool function that other browsers don't have. So what does this do? String representing source code of the given regex. Oh. Why is that valuable? I don't know. I'm sure somebody needs it for some reason. And more typos. More typos. But you can see it created this file. Let's delete it. Oh, dude, I never used this Y flag. That looks really handy. I'm going to have to keep that in mind. Document is inaccessible. Please try again later. What? Get the fuck out of here. Maybe it needed to wait for a minute. I don't know. I don't understand why it would not be accessible. No reason why it shouldn't be. Let's make it sleep for a second. So this is a timeout function, this utility sleep thing. Works differently than the set timeout in vanilla JavaScript, but yeah, actually, Google Apps Script runs a lot like if you made every single function async await, which is why it's easier to reason about. But god damn it, what the fuck? Am I missing some permissions? No. Oh, shoot. I didn't give it a name. That shouldn't matter, but temp. That shouldn't matter, but maybe it does. Why is it inaccessible? Why? I know this shit works. The only thing I can think of is I'm using my personal account instead of my enterprise account. And maybe, let's go look at the documentation for this shit. Ugh. That's still, come on, Google. That doesn't make any sense. Surely not. Surely not. All right, let me look up something here. That's another thing too. This shouldn't be creating it as, it's creating it as a PDF, which shouldn't be happening. Oh, that's the reason. I've just got a typo. Let's try it now. Interesting to know. So that's good to know. If you don't assign it, if it can't assign it the new meme type you're looking for, it defaults to the original. And then I still don't understand why it wouldn't be able to open the file, but maybe it's because it's corrupted in some way and it doesn't know what to do, I guess, but that still doesn't make any sense. This is probably still going to throw an error. That was just a coincidence. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. Yeah. Wait. Oh, no, we got closer. Okay. Oh, cool. This is what I was wondering about. What would happen if it was null? And then see, this is a Google Doc now. And see, it's all funky format, but it's it's there at least. So cool. We're getting closer. We're getting closer. So here we'll just say flap, flap. So if that's not, if it's true or not null, then otherwise just return back an empty string. And yada, yada, yada. All right, and then I should need this. All right, let's get moving along here. Now I want to check for emails, I want to check for phones, and I want to check for first names. First names, you would hope, would be the first thing in a resume. One would hope. It's not necessarily always the case, but more often than not. And so actually let's bring back that. And we're going to log this text so that we can play with it. And I want it logged as the raw text, not the formatted text that's going to go into Google Docs. So we're going to log it because we want to play around on Regex 101 with it. And I don't need to do this because I know what it all is going to be, but this is to show you how to do it, how to think through and reason about these things. And so this would be the way I would do it the first time through, but this is like my 5th or 6th time building this. So, and yet I still have issues. So don't feel bad when you run into issues. Everyone has these, even experienced people. All right. So what we want to do is get the name. So what would be a good regular expression for finding a name? I'm assuming the start of a string. I'm assuming some alphabet characters. I want all of them. And now I need to account for, and this is a good one to test it on since he has a middle initial. So we get the first name doing this, and I don't know. I honestly don't have a great way of processing this because let me see what the one I use currently gives us. But I'm pretty sure the one I use currently is no good. Yeah, I mean, it gets us first name and initial. Which isn't bad, honestly. I think that's why I just said screw it, because why do I have this though? That seems unnecessary. Non-white space. Oh. I'm wondering why I did it that way. Surely there was a reason. I know I don't want numbers, so I'm not putting word character. By the way, you could write this. Oops. So what I'm saying is capital or lowercase. I mean, you could just throw a in case sensitive flag in there. Enter your regular expression. It would do the same thing. So you're seeing there's not a match, but then if we throw in this, it'll get the match. So we'll just do that. So our name equals case insensitive. Okay, so we need to write a condition here to check for headers versus not headers and what we're looking at. So if the header exists, I want to look in the header for what I'm after. Oh, and I want to use this wrapper function. So if this matches, it's going to return a match, but that match is going to look like this doesn't really show you, but when you get a regular expression match via the exec function, it's an object, not a string. And the match is the first index in the object, and the object itself is just like the whole match, because there's different types of matches you could do. So I've got this, let me grab, got this function that I use to validate stuff like this. And so basically I pass through any kind of object here, and then I pass through a number associated with it, and I'm saying if this object is true, meaning it exists, so it's not null, it's not undefined, it's not an empty string. If it exists, return it with the index that I've passed through, and then trim it. Like I use trim just in case there's some junk data. Otherwise, return an empty string. And so then I can just wrap this up in this reg function, give it the index. So this is the object, and then this is the other argument, the index, and then otherwise. Otherwise, I want to do the same thing, but instead of getting the header text to match against, if there's no header to match against, I want to match against the body text. Body text. There we go. And then boom. And so what will happen is it'll check the header first. So if a header exists, it's going to try to extract the name from that, because we're assuming the name is going to be located in the header. If there is no header, we're assuming it should be the first thing in the body. And if for whatever reason they've got some numbers at the start of it, then it's just going to return back an empty string, which is fine, because we're also going to add some other data along with the name when we're naming the file as just kind of a default catch-all. But anyway, now we want to grab the email. So we'll say email equals, and again, we want to do the same thing, checking against whether or not this exists. Hang on one second. I got somebody sending me a message. It's just my pharmacy. And we want to check against emails. And I've got a pretty good, actually, email regular expression that I use for finding emails that is my preferred method. So I'm just going to paste it in here and you can see. So what this does is it looks for any word character, so a number or a letter or an underscore, which is what an email can include. It looks for that, or a period, because periods can also be in an email address. It looks for one or more of those before an @ symbol. And so the advantage of that is you get a match for that, you get a match for that, not for that, because I don't think you can have that as an email. I don't think you can have hyphens. If you can, I don't want it, because that's not a valid thing. But you could get multiple dots, like stuff like that, and it pretty much catches all. So this part of the match is here to the beginning, and then we get the @ match, and then this is that backslash w plus would be Gmail the match. Then this is looking for the dot whatever domain match, and then this is looking for the .com, .net, .careers, .ai, .io, yada 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 yada. So anyway, it's pretty good. Works. It's the best one I've come up with. I'm just going to cheat a little bit here. Okay. So now we've got our email match. And let's do some more cheating. We want to get our phone number match. And so phone numbers, let's just write one. It's worth doing, I guess. Just giving variance of numbers so we can see the match and not match. So we want to start with the word boundary. Then we want to find a number. Oh, and this is going to be US. So if you have like a different type of, not US only, but like US-ish. I mean, there's other number formats that this is going to miss, I guess is what I'm saying. So I want to find, at the very beginning of this, I want to find a number, actually, a specific number range. I don't want it to start with 0. It needs, or 1. I want between 2 and 9, right? Because if its phone number starts with a 1, that's not the number I'm looking for, or not what I'm looking for. Then I want to find either shoot, what would that be? Oh yeah, I just want to find one. Then I want to find 2 more numbers after that. So I'll say 2. And then I want to find, there might be a parenthesis sometimes. There might just be a white space. I'll start with the parentheses. And I want 0 or 1 parentheses. So and then I want to find zero or 1 non-word character. And then I want to find 3 integers, numbers, 3. And then I want, again, 0 or 1, which would account for dots and hyphens and or just spaces. And then I want 4 numbers. And then I want a word boundary. So say we've only matched the 2 valid phone numbers with this. And so then I just dump that in here. Dump that in here. And now we get our phone number match. And finally, we want to find LinkedIn addresses. And I don't know if there's one in here, so I'm going to write linkedin.com/in/ there's sometimes some crazy crap in people's stuff, so I want to account for all of it. And so we're just looking for linkedin.com/in/ and the reason I'm doing / is because you need to escape a slash in regular expressions. And then I guess I should spell this correctly. Any non-white space character, get it till the end. And that should give us what we need in most cases. And so then I can drop that. Oh, I guess I need to get my cheat stuff here. Drop that. Drop that. Okay, that should be it. And now I just want to push these things in on every iteration. So I just want to say candidate names, push name, candidate emails, push email, candidate phone, push phone, candidate LinkedIn's, push LinkedIn. Okay. And now I have these things defined. And then finally, I want to rename this file because I just named it temp A up here, and I want to rename it the candidate name. And then I'm also going to just assign it or give it the file ID as well, just because I want something in there if the name doesn't come back correctly. Actually, you know what? Maybe if the... Yeah, I'm going to do something else here. If this name is, so yeah, new file name. So if name is true, we're going to do name plus new doc ID. But if it's not true, if that name came back empty because of some weird thing, then I'm going to give it the default name. Replacing anything after the dot with nothing. Like, so I don't want the .pdf, etc. So I'm saying / dot, which means specifically a dot. And then I'm saying dot, which is any character. And then I'm saying any character plus, like, so all the way through the end. So essentially it's just saying when you see a dot, grab it and everything after it and delete it and replace it with an empty string. Plus new doc ID. Okay. And then I want to set the name. So I need to go up here and I'm going to call this function again. I'm not going to just grab this because that's a variable. It's not. Actually, it would probably be fine, but in any case, I'm going to grab it again. And then I'm going to say set name. And then I'm going to say new file name. Okay. And then that should be it for the loop stuff. And now I want to push this stuff into the sheet and give it a record, essentially, that we can reference in the future. So I will say oh, I want a resume link too. So we do that. We can do that. File links. File links push. Just going to push on these doc IDs, and so I also need the file name. What's the path for a doc file? Give me 1 second. I don't want to show this on my main screen. Just because I'm going to open a random document here, and I don't know. Okay. That's the front of the path that you'll have for a Google Doc, and then that's the ID that we're appending onto the end of it. Okay. Now we should be good. And then now we can say main sheet get range, and then we want to let's see. Actually, we don't need to get range, because what we want to do is we're going to hang on. I just always like making my headers look nice. There we go. We don't actually need to get the range, because we're always just going to insert new files at the top, so we're always going to insert it into row 2. And so what we really need to do here is create a row to insert this into. And so let's talk about that a little bit. When you're inserting rows into a Google Sheet, it looks like an array, or a multi-dimensional array, which probably may or may not have any clue what that means. But the first array is the row itself, which is like this bracket. And then each column within that row is its own. No, sorry, that's wrong. So, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. So, yeah, each column is its own, actually, but that's not the way we're doing this. Let's see, how's a good way to explain? We'll just write it, you'll see. Let's see. maybe this. So this would be the table. So this, right? And then this is the row within the table. And then each column within that row is separated by commas. So comma separated values. And so if you had multiple rows that you were inserting, you would do them like this. And then if you inserted that via the methods we're about to do, it would insert 2 rows. But we're just going to insert 1. So you'll see. All right, so our row drop, and then the first thing I want to put in is the email identifier. So that is going to be the email ID, which would be message ID here. So we'll drop that. And then the next thing we want is the sent timestamp, which was timestamp. And then the next thing we want is the sender. So that's sender. And then we want the resume link. And this is where it's going to get a little bit interesting. So right now these are arrays. And if I try to drop those in, it's going to just drop in, it'll say like object, which isn't what we want to do. So there's a couple things we can do here. We can say Json Stringify, which will make it a string that we drop in there, and so it'll then have all the items in brackets, which is actually what I'm going to do for most of these things. But not all of them. So this is getting wordy in terms of like all the layers in here that like it's kind of difficult to follow after the fact if we come back to it. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to say name drop. I'm going to give these all new values and have them be different things based on what the data is in there. So name drop, if there is more than so canned names, if the length of that is greater than 1, then I just want to get I'm just going to get the first one and hope that that's what I want, I guess, which would be the first attachment in every file. Fuck. That's not good. I don't like that at all. Oh, because what I was concerned about is if it was an empty string in the first one. But what I can do is I can filter this down. So I can say filter function L return L is not I should just be able to say return L, because if it's an empty string it should filter it out. But I'll just say L is not equal to that, just in case. Now I can say if that length is greater than 1, just give me the first one. Damn, but if it's not, then if it's empty entirely, shit. All right, well, let's move this up again. So now we need another variable. Our name check length is let's just say if it's equal to 1, give me the first thing in there. else. Okay. Okay. And this should be fine because all I'm going to do here is just wrap this in Json Stringify. And then I'm just filtering out the null values because, oh, and also I do want to use another function called I've got this function up here that dedupes an array, unique. Oh, also, I forgot I've got this other fixed case function. I want to wrap that around this. And that's for if and when, like specifically in this instance, somebody has all uppercase in their name. This just normalizes the name for you. All right. Now, my concern is filtering out these emails, and then I do Stringify. And if I try to run a unique on an empty array, what happens? Let's see. Oh, cool. It just gives me back the empty array. That's good. That's what I wanted. All right, and then I'll put this in here. So this is difficult to read, but basically it's the functions work a little bit differently than you might think, so it would work from the inside out. And so the first thing that actually runs in here is this can filter function. So that runs first, filters out anything that's just an empty string. Then the unique function runs. Then it stringifies it so that we can drop it in. And we'll do the same thing here for phone drop. And finally, the same thing for LinkedIn. If I put the resume link at the end, what? Okay. So if I put this resume link at the end, I can, and probably should make it to where if there's multiple links, it just drops them one after the other, since it won't matter if it's overlapping over any other data. The bad thing with that is then you could never append any other data to this, so it's not good for scalability, but it would work for these purposes. And I don't know. I think I'm not going to do that though, because for me, I'd rather be able to just go in here and grab it. And while it does take a little bit longer to open the link, it's worth it to me. So I'm going to just keep them as an array. And I'm also going to add another column with the file names, because no, I don't need to do that. I don't need that. That's what these are for. All right, so name, email, phone, LinkedIn, resume, name, email, phone drop, LinkedIn drop. Okay, so now we've got a row drop, and then we just need to say main sheet and let's look this up. Inserts row before the given row position. Again, remembering that rows are defined starting with 1, not 0. So insert before 2, that's not intuitive. I've forgotten why that works like this. I think I do it before I push. I guess we'll see. Main sheet get range 1, first row, first column, row drop length, which would be, it's just going to be 1, but that's like how many rows we want to do. So if we had, you know, a couple of these, we could just append them to each other and hit a couple at a time. And then we need to find the column length, and we do that by just getting the, in this case we're only doing 1 row, so we always just know it's going to be the length of this row, which is how many items are within these inner brackets. Length. And then set values. And then row drop. And that should work. And then finally, once that all runs without any errors, we will then want to mark this email as read, but let's test it first to make sure it even works. I'm going to delete this. Let's run it. There we go, Lawrence J with that file name. I need to edit that. I want to put a hyphen between there. So let's go ahead and do that real quick now. Let's see where we name in the files. File name, file name, file name. Here we go. Space, hyphen, space, plus. Let's do that here too. There we go. So that's good. And then this. Ah, damn. Okay. So it did give us what we were looking to do, though. It just inserted the stuff. Email ID. And all right, let's just run it again, actually. Get rid of this stuff. Time stamp sender candidate name candidate email candidate phone candidate LinkedIn resume link. So I said insert before too, and I'm wondering, oh, I know what I'm doing. So, yeah, so this inserts a blank row before here, right? So this should have, yeah, 1001, right? So the cool thing about this, right, is we don't ever actually have to worry about expanding our rows, because we're always going to add one in and then always drop the first one in here. And so I just messed up. This should be 2. We're always going to start with the second row because that's where we're dropping this. So we're always going to first insert row and then drop it in there. So it should run fine now, and then just to be, because I don't, the last thing we want to do when we're done here is then mark that as mark red, because we're done with that email. So within the loop here, after we've successfully dropped this in here, we'll say message, what are we in I here? What is this? Target, I know. So target emails, glad I checked. Target emails. Mark red. I think that's it. Let's double check though. Yep. And we'll dump this in here since we looked it up. All right, let's try this one more time, and then we're going to delete this. Okay. Now there's some other stuff in here that I'm not including, like just because it's not perfect yet, but essentially what I've done, it's about 70% complete. It just doesn't work all the time, is map out the job experience within a resume, so that we can look that up and search experience by like date range, which is something that I've built out for LinkedIn under the Quickly tool. And I'm hoping to be able to add it to this project as well, but it's, resumes are not any one type of format and structure, and PDFs specifically make it really difficult. So still working on it, but it's coming in the future to my current employer, actually. So, well, parts of it anyway. All right, so let's run this one more time. And then I'll show you how to set up a time trigger if you just want to run. So this will just run for you periodically, however often you want to run them, so that you could set this up for yourself within your inbox. And anytime you have this, subjects meeting these parameters, you could change these up. Then you could have it run against this stuff for you. And then you get this output, which is the message ID. And the reason you might want that is like, you could then go in and then write a program to forward an email based on some of these parameters. So you could say, hey, I'm looking for this person. Maybe you look them up by this email address and say, if we find them, find all the messages that came in associated with that person, and then send me those messages. I might cover how to do that in another video, but this works for now. And then here's that file. So we're all good. That's how it works. That took longer than I thought it would. I've got other stuff I got to do today, so later.